Hello and welcome to the 6th webinar of the Journey to the SaaS webinar series. In this series, we've explored how the SaaS movement is redefining value to customers. Through our experience, we show how to empower and enable your teams to build, migrate, and optimize SaaS on AWS. Through SaaS best practices and resources, we've been guiding you through the SaaS journey, regardless of what stage you're at. So far, we've covered how you can plan to move to SaaS with AWS using the SaaS Journey framework. We've also talked about common SaaS adoption pitfalls and how to avoid them to maximize your success. We've also discussed how to reimagine your product strategy to deliver SaaS solutions. We've dived into leveraging trials to scale your growth and also developing effective SaaS pricing models. Hello, I'm Adrian DeLuca, Head of Solution Architecture for ISV Programs at AWS, and I'll be your host today. In this final webinar, I have the pleasure to host a panel of some amazing people from successful SaaS companies who are here to share their advice with you. So without any further ado, let me introduce some of them. So our first panelist today is Lohit Sama from ADP. Hey Lohit, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Hey Adrian, thanks for having me. It's a real honor to be a part of this panel. So I lead Lifeeon. Lifeeon is ADP's next-gen HCM solution, and I oversee all aspects of product development, which includes application development, product management, engineering, reliability, security, engineering, program management, our UX and GTM strategy as well. Excited to be on this panel and look forward to talking to you all over the next hour or so.
Fantastic. And next we have Franz Aman from MariaDB. Hey, Franz.
Hey, Adrian. Hello, everyone. So I run marketing for MariaDB, and I'm taking full advantage of social distancing and remote working. I'm working out of the Caribbean.
Totally jealous. Thanks for joining, Franz. And finally, we have Rich Wizik from NASDAQ. Hey, Rich, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Adrian, thanks. And thank you for having me aboard. It's my honor. My name is Rich Wizik. I'm with NASDAQ, headquartered in New York, and I'm a vice president within global technology. I'm head of technology of one of NASDAQ's product verticals, and also I am currently the liaison from technology on NASDAQ Market Technologies SaaS Transformation Core team. So thanks for having me.
Great stuff, Rich, and thank you all for joining today. Now, I'm really looking forward to a really good, deep discussion in your journeys or your individual journeys over the last couple of years with SaaS. But first, I want to start with looking at your motivation for moving to SaaS right at the very beginning. And I would like to start with you, Lohit. You know, ADP's has a number of innovation centers, Lifeeon, as you mentioned before, that provides next generation human capital platform or human capital management platform. Tell us a little bit about the Lifeeon story.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. It's a great question. And to just start off, you know, there's a lot of literature out there around how companies have to keep innovating and how do organizations stay relevant. And it's very relevant for a company like ADP because it's been in business for about 70 years, and you know it's got a track record of introducing many firsts in the HCM industry. But it's the incumbent in the industry, right? So how does it stay ahead of the competition? And how does it continue to innovate? So there's this concept that we latched onto, the concept around using an ambidextrous organization structure to truly ensure that the company doesn't get disrupted, right? So when you start looking at innovation, there's these two fundamental concepts of disruptive innovation and sustaining innovations. So when you think of an ambidextrous organization, the easiest way to picture it, the mental model for you to have is like a split brain, where one side of your brain functions on one aspect, a certain set of tasks, and the other side of your brain works on another set of tasks. So within ADP, what we decided to do is carve out the disruptive innovative model on one side of the org and the sustaining innovation on the other side of the org. And Lifeeon's mandate was to concentrate on disruptive innovation and ensure we disrupt the HCM industry. While also one of the other mandates for Lifeeon was to help ADP in its digital transformation. So, the entire ambidextrous org concept was to achieve continuous and disruptive innovation within the industry. Now, digital transformation just doesn't entail technology. Technology is just one aspect of it. So you've got to think of the org, the product, the business life cycle as well. So one of the things that we started looking at is, okay, how do we redefine some of these organization structures, some of these practices? So we kind of redefined some of our hiring practices. We refined how we were compensating associates. We started changing where we were accessing talent from, right? And so when you start looking at this model now we're building, you've built your org structure. Now you said, okay, I'm bringing in talent. Now you say, how do you structure these teams? So it was very important for us to have more of an agile cross-functional team collaboration across these various functions. And I'm talking about the different functions. I'm talking about product, marketing, sales, engineering, infrastructure, implementation, customer success. So we wanted to make sure all of these pieces sat in the same building, and there's a lot of cross-team collaboration. And the challenge now is you've brought these people in, you structured them well, is how do you ensure that all these pieces march to the same beat or are in tune? So that's when we started rolling out our OKRs, right? And tied to our OKRs were some of our KPIs. And then we rolled out our credos and principles, because you wanted to ensure at scale you can have the culture that you actually want. And it's not something that's just transitory in the early days, but it's sustainable over a period of time. So once we put this entire operating model in place, we just literally looked at it as a blueprint for other innovation centers that we're setting up across the world. That's the story of Lifeeon. We've been now in business for about 5 years, and we've launched the product in North America, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And we look forward to hopefully productive and successful fiscal year.
That's great. I mean, you talked a lot about collaboration, you talked about objectives and principles. So it's clearly an organizational transformation, not just a technical transformation. But tell us a little bit about how you had to rethink, your infrastructure, how you deliver that at a global scale.
Yeah, so given our global ambitions, in terms of our architecture approach from a technology standpoint, we decided to build a product using microservices, and to ensure the teams that were truly from a microservice approach standpoint. When you follow the microservices approach, you want to make sure your teams are truly responsible for the entire tech stack. So we let teams, early days, we let teams essentially own their entire technology stack and choose their own databases. This kind of led to an explosion of databases, and managing them became like a major operational challenge, and the cost associated with that was pretty high. So, we were born in the cloud, but managing a lot of our persistent stores using the EC2 instances took a lot of resources, and we were investing time in problems that were not truly going to differentiate the product per se. So we kind of made, about 4 years ago, we made the decision to go completely cloud native and leverage some of the managed services that AWS has to provide. And it kind of really tremendously reduced the operational burden of managing our persistent stores, and leverage out of the box functionality that can truly help us scale globally. And it's probably one of the best decisions we've made, because we're now actually concentrating on the product that can truly differentiate ourselves in the market, as opposed to solving problems that aren't really the USP of the product.
So it sounds like managing infrastructure was one of those real conscious decisions that you made to really protect a lot of those precious resources that you have. That's great. Franz, I want to come to you next. And I understand MariaDB is launching SkySQL on AWS, which is a full SaaS solution in the not too distant future. Tell us a little bit about your upcoming launch.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. So let me just reach back into the past for a moment to introduce MariaDB a little bit more fully. We have been a traditional open source company. So we've literally written all the code to implement the database. And the engineering team started off, they were the original MySQL engineering team that included our founder, Monty Videnius, and started building or forking MySQL and then building MariaDB. And over time, MariaDB has become one of the top 5 most loved and used databases with more than 1 billion Docker downloads. And at this point, 75% of the Fortune 500 is running MariaDB. So we have customers like NASDAQ, and Rich is on today, Deutsche Bank, DBS Bank, ServiceNow, Verizon, and so on and so forth. But all of our bits have traditionally been delivered through either Docker or through downloads, and customers have then, they needed to run the databases themselves. And just like what Lohit just went through, that at times becomes burdensome, and you want to focus on your business and differentiation. So we looked at the landscape of database services out there in the public clouds. And of course, there is a lot of MariaDB out there in the public clouds. Every big public cloud has MariaDB available. That, of course, is the open source community version. So we decided that we really needed to come out with our own enterprise version and implement that as a SaaS solution so that customers in the cloud could also have the benefit of our enterprise features and enterprise capabilities, but not the downside of having to run and operate everything themselves. So that's the motivation. That's what SkySQL was born out of. And we launched SkySQL in the first cloud early in the year in March. And by Q1 next calendar year, we're going to be in AWS. And that's something we're really, really looking forward to. You have so many application developers and such a huge ecosystem. So we're really looking forward to bringing our enterprise features into AWS as well. And that will deliver a database as a service offering that comes from the source. So, since we're creating the database, we also believe that we know best how to support it and run it. And that is a full-featured platform. It includes all the enterprise platform capabilities that MariaDB has to offer that obviously go way beyond the community version. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
That's great. I mean, going from community to enterprise it's a big jump, and I understand that MariaDB has a presence in 48 countries. Obviously, a lot of success is being had on the international stage. Tell us a little bit about what does go-to-market mean for MariaDB, and how have you thought about packaging and pricing strategies? Yeah,
so obviously the go-to-market has changed quite a bit with going into a SaaS model. The customers in 48 countries you quoted, they are on SkySQL just since the launch in March. So within just a few months, we literally signed up customers across 48 countries. And that's one of the big changes in the go-to-market dynamic, having that global access to markets where we don't even have a sales office. Now, we're a small company, we're a startup. And being a startup, operating as a startup means you can't afford the go-to-market investments that maybe a large company can afford. So for us to be able to reach so many more customers at a global level is just phenomenal. You also tapped on pricing, and moving from what we used to do, node-based pricing, where you charge just for a database instance, to now a consumption-based model, that has a whole host of challenges for us. And of course, it's a great win-win in the end, because customers start paying for just what they're using. So the entry is a lot lower. And then, of course, where it's a win-win for, I believe, the customer and us is when they use more of our software, then we're also being rewarded. And it's a win-win because if we're doing a better job providing better software, well, customers will use it more. And that way, I think, it's a very fair give and take. And it also pushed us to really look at the architecture, the cloud architecture, and use very modern architectures. So we're using Kubernetes. We developed a MariaDB operator. We're using Prometheus and Grafana for monitoring. So our technology landscape, kind of the surroundings and how we build everything, has also changed very dramatically.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Franz. Rich, I want to go to you next. NASDAQ, obviously a internationally recognized name, and obviously in exchanges and capital markets, but something that a lot of people may not necessarily be familiar with is just all of your different technology solutions that you have. Can you tell us a little bit about your technology portfolio?
Yeah, Adrian. So when you think of NASDAQ, typically it's known as being the stock market of tech giants like Amazon, ADP that list on NASDAQ. We're the home of technology and innovation. So, and we also own and operate 28 markets across North America and Europe. We're a major data and index provider. And it's really fun when somebody asks, how did the NASDAQ perform today? Because basically you're getting asked, how is the economy doing? So overall, it's a really interesting company. But what's even more interesting is our technology business, and that's the fastest growing part of NASDAQ, where we build and sell products and services that run marketplaces around the world. And as you mentioned, our technology solutions help over 500 organizations globally to power or surveil their markets. So our technology portfolio actually supports companies with solutions for trading, clearing, surveillance, market data, pre and post trade risk, data analytics, and really many other products. But what's really exciting, particularly now in the SaaS realm, is NASDAQ's growth in providing technology solutions in what we call new markets. And this expansion is really outside of the traditional financial capital markets. And some examples of these markets include sports betting, real estate, reinsurance, shipping and logistics, digital assets, and many others. So our technology can trade and clear any asset class, and our attitude is if you can dream it, we can build it. And we're always expanding our reach of products and really welcoming new clients that have innovative ideas.
Yeah, great. A lot of people recognize you obviously for what you do for capital markets, but Rich, you're not known as a software company, right? Unlike some of your other two panelists here. But what is really motivating NASDAQ to really double down on building software as a service and now interacting with its customers this way?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Adrian. And really, the motivation is driven by several factors. For one, our customers are demanding it. And one of the main drivers for the strategy is knowing what the customers are actually demanding. Overall, the trend in the market, according to Gartner stats, is 89% of the world's business enterprises are already using SaaS solutions, with about 75% stating that nearly all their apps will be SaaS by 2021. So when you look at Gartner's SaaS revenue projections, SaaS is expected to hit $151 billion by 2022, and it's been growing over 10% annually. So first and foremost, the customer demand and market for SaaS is there for sure. So, and then the cloud also provides a lot more flexibility and scalability. We are constantly making large investments in the scalability of our systems, and whereas if we were in the cloud, it could allow for instant scalability or elasticity when needed. So it allows you to accelerate your innovation and instead focusing a lot of our resource on those parts of the market. And we allow those resources to focus on accelerating innovation, whether it's continue to go to a lower latency environment, bringing in new features and functions, and really taking advantage of the elastic, scalable, and reliable platform and environment of the cloud. But I'd say that another driver, particularly within the growth of our new market segment, what we realized is in order to be able to scale the organization to support that growth, there were many benefits to operating in a SaaS model, particularly when you start taking advantage of multi-tenant architectures and deployments. So, we quickly realized supporting on-prem and lift and shift models is not going to scale without always adding more staff, and that's just not sustainable or profitable. And the last thing we're thinking about is to open up and democratize our market access. So Today, NASDAQ operates in a really very well-defined ecosystem, but requires our clients to put a lot of advanced software in place. And making the ecosystem more democratized and less expensive to come into our markets can be done through standardizing our APIs and providing that SaaS flexibility. So it's a really interesting way to create more global market ecosystem while maintaining each market as its own. Internally, what we've done in our transformation, we've put together a SaaS transformation core team, and that consists of leaders that represent multidisciplinary functions from across the organization. And I think Lohit touched on this earlier within ADP, but our SaaS transformation core team functions consist of product, sales, finance, marketing, customer success, and technology, where we educate and continue to put the frameworks and processes in place to operate our products and SaaS models. Our core team, we collaborate closely across the product teams to continually increase their SaaS operating maturity. And I think as many on this webinar can attest to, when the topic of SaaS is first discussed, for people not familiar with operating as a SaaS, what I found is the perception that generally that SaaS is just running a solution in the cloud for a client, and it's mainly just a technology model, but more like a managed service. But anyone familiar with SaaS knows that all the functional areas need to operate differently from traditional models. So initially, it's a lot of education, and the AWS SaaS Factory team has really been a huge help for us at NASDAQ. My role as the global technology representative within the cross-functional core team is really to help ensure the technology organization enables achieving the strategic goals of running products in the SaaS model by working with our technology teams to provide the support and solutions in areas, for example, in the cloud, architecture, security, DevOps, and automation. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Where I want to go to next is really touch on what you were talking there, Rich, about that strong customer demand. And it's not just about bringing software and just running it in the cloud. There's really a different expectation from customers around what the experience is going to be like. They're expecting a different user experience in the way they're interacting with the software and what they want to connect it to. So I'm going to start with you, Franz, and I'd like to ask you, as a company that's already been delivering software through different means, what were some of the challenging parts of the journey that you found in bringing SkySQL onto cloud?
Yeah, well, first let me say, when we go IPO, I think we have to go on NASDAQ, but that aside. So I want to echo some of what Rich said. The change management across all the various internal functions, because literally everything has to be done differently. And there were parts of our organization that we still had running on spreadsheets, just because being a small company. But finance, of course, had to really figure out, how do you do billing? How do you do billing in a SaaS world? Very different from invoices for software subscriptions in the old world. And support, the whole support team, and just across all the various functional teams, we had to have a lot of kickoff meetings, offsite meetings that we couldn't even do now, but really having the teams work together to ensure that everyone understood how their function needed to work differently, operate differently, and contribute to the overall goal. And engineering had a very big challenge also now dealing with this new form of delivery, where you don't just ship the bits and you're done. You have to worry about providing a simplicity to customers that previously was not required. Customers would do all kinds of crazy things with our software, and it's sometimes amazing to see what customers have been able to do with on-premise product. But in a SaaS model, you have to make the software easier to use. You have to engineer simplicity into it, and everyone knows to get to simplicity is very, very heavy lifting. But in addition, we didn't want this to just be about a change of location, where the software is now just in a different place, but it's kind of run the same way. You have the opportunity to take advantage of cloud native implementations, cloud native capabilities. And just to give you a couple of quick examples, we have a cloud data warehouse, and in our cloud data warehouses, customers are storing a lot of data. I mean, it's terabytes and in some cases petabytes. And when we moved into the cloud, of course, one of the things we wanted to use was S3 storage because of the durability and because of the cost. And if you compare 2 cents a gigabyte per month to what amounts to 5 to 10 times the cost in other storage media, a backup turns from $200 to $2,000 for 10 terabytes. So using native services and infrastructure and S3 as a native storage model, that was just phenomenal from a cost performance perspective. But then also using cloud characteristics, being able to suspend the service, start stopping, to take the cost down in times when nothing's needed, the elasticity and engineering all that into a simple, straightforward product interface that everyone can use. So, you know, great challenges, but also great opportunities, because that creates all the differentiation and makes the product so much more interesting for the end customer.
Absolutely. Engineering for simplicity, I really like that. And actually, MariaDB recently published results from a global survey that looked at how companies are bringing their data and their databases onto cloud. And it was run obviously at an interesting time, right? It was run during obviously the current pandemic that we find ourselves in. But I wanted to ask you specifically, you know, there's a couple of interesting data points that came out of that. And some of the results talked about, you know, 52% of databases are moving to the cloud, and moving analytic data to the cloud, 43%. You know, so we really see this trend towards database automation being most impactful trends. Why do you think customers care about these trends when they're trying to build high value, you know, software or high value experiences for customers?
Yeah, great question. I mean, the fundamental trends, the vectors we see here, they certainly existed before, and there was a general gravity towards the cloud. But with the pandemic and all the craziness going on, it just created an extra sense of urgency, and a lot of businesses also got under a lot of pressure, and they just didn't have time to spend on mundane tasks. They were looking for automation, not having to worry about certain things. They needed resource optimization because they were down in staffing. So for them to move projects more aggressively to the cloud, and databases in particularly more aggressively to the cloud, meant that backups, upgrades, a lot of mundane tasks were just taken care of. So that certainly we saw accelerate, particularly because of the pandemic and the extra push to remote work, where you can't just go into the office and change a hard drive. And the clouds have stood up amazingly well during all the craziness. So the clouds have done a fabulous job. So every business sees that that is a reliable platform to build on, scale on. And we've also seen customers become even more cost sensitive. The cost pressures certainly also forced a lot of customers to look at the cloud. In the case of analytical databases or cloud data warehouses in particular, we've also seen that everything being online, so much more of the business being digitally executed, all the data is created in the cloud. So moving the data on-prem into warehouses is just really a thing of the past. So most of the data being generated in the cloud also then is hosted in the cloud, analyzed in the cloud, and you get the benefits of suspend, start, stop, You only pay for the storage if you don't use the compute, and so on and so forth. And then lastly, we've seen this with some of our customers, but I'm just going to mention Talk quickly because we just had a webinar with them. Talk is a platform where you can make a reservation in a restaurant. This sounds kind of weird to say that now, but that was their business, right? You could make a reservation, you would pay for the seat, and they were particularly focused on high demand restaurants, Michelin star restaurants, very high end, where there was more demand than supply. So people were willing to put $350 down for a seat in the restaurant just to get in. And so their business was really an e-commerce transaction for restaurant reservations. Now, when the pandemic hit, they saw the revenue and the reservations crater to next to zero. And they were able to pivot very quickly to Talk to Go. So they changed to an online reservation model where you could order to go. The restaurants had an ability to also have their own people deliver, or you could use a delivery service. So a very flexible architecture, but within weeks, they doubled their customers. They had to onboard so many customers that literally everyone in the company had to work on onboarding. But the back end, from a cloud perspective, driving the scale was not an issue because resources were available on demand. And that scaling up, obviously, huge benefit to any business that can weather the storm and has even more demand during the crisis.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, speaking of data, Lohit, I want to come to you because, I know that human capital management platforms process lots of personally identifiable information, or PII data. When you were considering moving to SaaS, how did you manage governance of that really important information that you manage on behalf of your customers?
Yeah, Adrian, processing PII data is something that's pretty core to what we do, and it's something that we have to be very careful about. So to break down the answer to your question, I'll have to talk about two components, right? So data security is one, and privacy and compliance will be the other. So when talking about data security, ADP, we just, as a company, we take our data security very, very seriously because we process so sensitive information. So as a part of understanding our responsibility towards our clients, that thought process has to go. We have to embed that even in our technology choices. So while we were analyzing each and every AWS service, we closely monitored and looked into the security feature that that was available for these AWS services. And AWS, essentially best in class here, and has been a great partner while working with us because of our various requirements. So from a data security standpoint, we had to break it down into 3 levels, right? So we had the application level, the DB level, and the infrastructure side of the house. So at the persistent store level, we designed our platform to kind of use encryption at rest across all our databases. So all the managed DB services from AWS, offer encryption at rest out of the box. So this helped us enforce our policies at scale, which again, goes a long way when it comes to securing our applications at a database level. Now, at the application level, we use various levels of encryption, again, leveraging AWS's secret manager, and for service accounts, we use IRSA, which is the IAM roles for service accounts. And at the infrastructure level, we use the pod level authentication for EKS. Again, we use EKS as our managed Kubernetes solution. So that is, how we approach data security as a whole across the Lifeeon platform and product. Now, coming to privacy and compliance, I kind of mentioned our global ambitions and our the global nature of the product. So GDPR compliance and privacy are critically important for our MNC clients, given the stated PII transfer requirements that the clients have. And it's also something that ADP takes super seriously, right? So ADP is just for some context, ADP is one of the very few PII processors in the world. and I think there are under 30 of them that has already gone through a process of setting up its own binding corporate rules, which kind of significantly simplifies the compliance process and minimizes the burden on our clients. So from a process and legal standpoint, AWS being set up to support our requirements and the requirements of our multinational clients, which include SOC 2 compliance, has really made for a great partner in this regard, and has really helped us implement our solution with the highest security and compliance standards.
Absolutely, not just an important part for your customers, but also, for us as employees to know that's really great. Now, Rich, NASDAQ operates in a highly regulated industry, and you're dealing with different types of data, market data. Tell us a little bit about the challenges you face when you've got 10+ product teams in multiple geographies, multiple jurisdictions, all dealing with this data. It must cause some interesting organizational challenges.
Yeah, it's a great question, Adrian. So with NASDAQ itself operating markets globally within the highly regulated industry, and being a self-regulating organization, that's actually viewed as a strength by our customers. So NASDAQ itself uses the products in our technology portfolio. So what we sell, we use, and what we use, we sell. So we believe in our products, and if they aren't good enough for us, they're not good enough for our clients. So in jurisdictions and countries that NASDAQ doesn't operate markets, but our solutions are deployed, the domain expertise continually accumulates. For example, NASDAQ is the industry benchmark for our surveillance solutions and powering markets at over 50 marketplaces, 17 regulators, and over 160 market participants worldwide. So our cross-market, cross-asset class surveillance solutions, they're used daily by 3,500 compliance professionals. So really that collective knowledge just really helps strengthen our products and services through shared learning and cross-border interaction. So some of the challenges we faced are now really primarily centered around our new markets where we're expanding into, and we don't really possess the years of domain expertise and depth within that industry or geographical region. So it's a journey as we expand and we learn, and we continually gain that experience and depth. So the question of having product teams across multiple geographies and any challenges there, we generally formulate the product teams in the same geographical location. But one of the strengths of NASDAQ and its organization is precisely its global presence. So when we have opportunities in a geography, we likely have some NASDAQ presence or contacts from relationships, and are really able to tap into those. So I hope that adds a little bit of color.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rich. As we come into this final section of the webinar, I want to ask all three of you, to share some of your pearls of wisdom for success. You've obviously shared some really interesting insights today, but I'd like to ask all three of you, what recommendations do you have for audiences? What are the key takeaways that you want them to really think about as they're progressing on their SaaS journey? But maybe if I could also ask you a bit cheekily, what plans do you have for your own SaaS journey into the future? I'm sure many would like to know what's coming up. So Lohit, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, just strictly speak about from a technology standpoint, as you guys are embarking on the SaaS journey, my advice would be, just based on our learnings over the past 5 years, is to carefully think through, your multi-tenancy model, including, what isolation you need both at the compute as well as database levels. These early decisions that you tend to make will stick with you for a long time. So you need to understand the trade-offs, engage with your AWS account team, the AWS specialists, SaaS factory, and the product teams as you evaluate your AWS services. Thoroughly research the availability, the security, the compliance of each and every service you plan to use. I've got a little bit. I mean, for us, our AWS partnership has been just tremendous. I've got a little bit of a story to share. Is I had the opportunity to share the use of Graph database, which is core to our technology stack, and that kind of caught the attention of the product owner from the AWS Neptune team, because I happened to mention the article that we use AWS Neptune. The team reached out to me directly and basically asked me what we were working on, and there was like a realignment of their roadmap to deliver some core features that we needed to get out to meet some of our client requirements, right? So having that deep partnership with AWS and even will help you, especially if you adopt some of the service offerings which are early on in their product maturity. That partnership tremendously has helped us. Now, speaking of the future, what are we planning on doing? We're really looking into leveraging serverless in some shape or form. And the other aspect, as we're going global, is truly work with the SaaS factory to solidify our multi-region and multi-AZ strategy when it comes to deployments. Because it's imperative for us, given what we do, and especially during these times, for us to maintain our uptime, reliability, and service offering around the clock across the world. So, I want to first really take this opportunity to thank the AWS team that has been a phenomenal partner, and we wish to continue this partnership moving forward.
Thanks, Lohit. Franz, obviously exciting times for us ahead with SkySQL coming on to AWS, but what parting advice would you like to give the audience today?
Yeah, so we're certainly, I mean, we've learned quite a bit going into AWS, and still going through that journey. But I can definitely echo that the SaaS factory joint engineering architecture reviews were hugely helpful to us. So AWS has helped tremendously in making us successful and making sure that the architectural choices that we had to make for AWS, we made with everything reviewed and feedback end to end. So full eyes, and certainly feel comfortable with the path that we've taken. So that's just great help. The other thing is there's such a rich SaaS ecosystem in AWS. So we're obviously using a lot of SaaS solutions as part of our overall SaaS offering, whether it's billing, whether it's workflow, asset management. So there are so many components of our product where we're database people. We're not billing people. We're not that. So there are a lot of areas where we said that is not our area of expertise. We want to be able to innovate around database and deliver the best enterprise DBaaS solution to our customers. So all the other surrounding pieces, what SaaS offerings are available, and we certainly scouted the SaaS ecosystem for that and plugged in the components as needed. The other thing is that as a SaaS infrastructure solution, security is something you have to be super serious about. And in a way, it's ironic because most of the bungles around security stem from on-prem failures. There are so many issues and challenges that companies in on-prem deployments have faced, yet the cloud is always feared of being one of the least secure places. And of course, there are also then reports like the threat report from the spring from just this year, where it said 43% of the cloud databases are not encrypted. Ouch. So, this is also where we made sure that we even went back into re-engineering our product and making secure connections mandatory. You cannot change the configuration. You are absolutely going to connect to SkySQL in a secure fashion. And those are the kind of things that we feel we had to think it through. We put an emphasis on security, and that is also just a huge, important emphasis that I would recommend everyone to pay attention to.
Great point there too, Franz, about the rich ecosystem. successful SaaS solutions to run also depend on other SaaS solutions and the integration between them. So that's a great point. Rich, finally to you, what recommendations do you have for our audience today?
Yeah, listen to the panel. There's been a lot of great common insights. So experience counts, and go back and re-listen to it because there's a lot of good common themes here. For example, understanding your multi-tenancy models early. That is key. But some of the recommendations I'd make as well is really to make it a priority of ensuring you're educating across your cross-disciplinary teams on how to run a successful SaaS organization. Don't strictly focus on technology. With AWS, take advantage of all the resources that the SaaS Factory team makes available. And if we have the opportunity, engage the AWS SaaS Factory team. As mentioned before, they're world-class and will definitely guide you to success. Some of the lessons that we learned, we knew as with any transformation, it would be a journey. So make sure you understand it takes time, and set some realistic plans to achieve success. Put OKRs and KPIs in place and capture the metrics. So you're able to measure your improvements and success, and maybe not so much lessons learned, but more confirmation that it's difficult to retrofit culture, processes, ways of working, and technology solutions back into SaaS models. So with new initiatives and frameworks in place, it's much easier. So it's a journey.
Thanks very much, Rich. And I would like to thank all three of you today, Lohit, Franz, and Rich, for sharing such great insights with us and our audience. So I would like to, as we come to a close, I'd like to share a couple of additional resources that were mentioned by the panelists today. You'll see that the AWS SaaS Factory webpage has a rich set of information and resources, testimonies, white papers, learning modules for you to learn more about that. For partners that are looking to navigate their journey through SaaS, we also have a number of resources in the AWS Partner Network. We also have the AWS Marketplace for listing and being able to help customers procure software. And we have some great new training courses and certifications that you should go and explore. So please do connect on the AWS website and learn more about those resources and programs that are available to you.